if I ask another question?
Yeah.
So yesterday, I forget the line of questioning, but you mentioned something about Lauren having had glimpses or experiences, and talking about the forgetfulness of that afterwards. Yeah. Could you say something about that?
Yeah. This is what happens to a lot of people, is that they wake up and then they fall back to sleep for a period of time. So they wake up, so the veil, or if you look at it as a veil, like a separate itself, like a veil, the veil falls down and then it pops back up for a while, the energy, and it goes back up and down. What's actually happening with everybody here is the veil is going up and down. It's just there's not a seeing of this. It's just perceived as a good mood or a bad mood, or like when the veil's up, it's very up, then it's very much in doership, and it's just perceived as a bad mood. Whereas when you're looking at the world and there's love and there's beauty and there's enjoyment, the veil's down. And this becomes so obvious when you look at personal relationships. This became very obvious here. Was that some days my partner would do something and it would be so annoying. Other days he'd do exactly the same and there'd be very little reaction. And that's what people say, a good mood or a bad mood. It just means that the doership veil is less. But it's not all the way down, so it's not seeing really what's happening. It just is considered a good mood or a less of a good mood. But when you're generally happy, and there's a flow and to life, and there's less separation, it's just it's not seen because, well, it's not being pointed out or whatever reason.
And if some of those experiences are like, so when I was 22, I had an experience where it felt like a wave of universal particles washed through me, and the boundary of me was dissolved. Yeah. And there was infinite seeing and infinite depth, and there was like a furnace of love exploding atoms everywhere. And it was as if God had scooped me up and put into the heart, and it was the source and the reason and the explosion of everything. And then there was just absorption. There was neither me nor the experience. It was just pure experience. And then instantly the separation, and then Gavin is here again, and it slowly smothered over the experience until it was gone. It couldn't be seen. So it certainly left me with the feeling that it's always there and available. Yes, something is veiling.
Yeah.
But the relaxation, the trip that, I mean, in hindsight, looking back, it looked like I'd come out of a string of difficult relationships that were very tense. And that tension in that weekend was completely undone. And a relaxation happened there that I could never consciously. Now it feels in the aftermath. And it's happened these kind of experiences have happened a few times. Yeah. But the actual doing of that level of relaxation, I have no idea how to do that.
Yeah, and the seeker can't, because it's the falling away of the seeker. It really is. What happened in that weekend, and it's similar to what happened to Laurent. Laurent had no idea about spirituality, is that through circumstance of life there was a giving up of the seeker of being checkmate or snookered, or there was like exhaustion of it. Something happens like that, and then the seeker is funny because it's funny, and I also understand how much discomfort that brings, because the seeker, the one that wants to get back to it, is perpetuating the seeking. It's a bit of a... And what happens with those experiences that you're talking about is that's a very dramatic experience. I don't live like you experience, like that experience, because you went from doership, full-on doership and suffering, to no suffering, but also everything falling away. Like you even lost the I amness of the body. Here there's still an I amness, like not the I amness of the body, but there's still an I amness. There's awareness and there's I amness. You lost the I amness, and you just went just to awareness with nothing, or with light, or whatever it decided to. Here now, what's experienced is it's very natural. The attention and the energy is out in the space. It's not in here. But this body still walks around and acts and does. Like it doesn't walk into the poles. There's still a sense of coming from here, and there's an I amness. Like I am. But and it's very natural what happens. It just doesn't go into I am Lisa, I have this, I want this, people need to be that way. That's fallen away. So in situations, it's just everything's falling through into this emptiness. There's not a constant jarring when there's all these concepts of I am Gavin, I want to understand spirituality. When you have these ideas, there's jarring. And this is what liberation is. When you have awakenings, this often confuses it. It doesn't confuse the mind, it gives the mind loads to seek for. Because what also happens when you have these awakenings is there's often a huge amount of love in the heart chakra. And you don't live in that heart chakra love feeling. That comes, and it comes here quite a lot, but that comes and goes. It's about no feeling, no emotion, no sensation. It's about the attention changing from being a personal self in here to the empty space. And in that, thoughts and emotions still arise, but you're no longer them. But when you have these awakenings, they're so dramatic, the mind then clings on, particularly to the love sensation. And then in spiritual seeking, seeks the love sensation, and it's going to go on forever, because that's not the end goal, that love sensation. It's the end of craving anything else than this. Then everything arising in everything arising in you rather than as you. So like, I am this body, I am Gavin, I had these experiences. Like, I could tell you the story, but there's no sense that's my story really anymore, although it arises here. It's been chopped. And what happens in these awakening experiences is normally, for a lot of people, they happen, especially if you've never come to this subject before, they happen, and then there's a period of time of the seeking and the momentum of the mind coming back up again. And then that slowly over time, it seems for a lot of people, but not everyone, it just gets dissolved into emptiness.
And is there any, like, I mean, it's a completely otherworldly experience.
Yeah.
Like my eyes weren't working anymore, it was just, I didn't even know what it was.
Yeah.
But is there any, like, is there different layers of awakened experience where you get to experience different stuff? I thought, you know, they talk about the Bodhisattva boomies.
Yeah. It seems that there can be for some people that awakening where there's still seeking going on, but it's kind of like the attention's not bound to here, but there's still seeking and happening. There's still a suffering, an underlying suffering happening. There's not different levels. There's either seeking or not seeking. But however, for some people it can be that the veil and there's the veil's down here for a period of time, so there's just a little bit of seeking, but the attention's very expanded. However, here many different experiences happen, but when the seeking's fallen away, you don't care anymore, because seeking is the end of suffering. So experiences still carry on happening here of, like one day I was sat talking to my friend and my consciousness just kept disappearing, so the I amness kept disappearing. And then it would pop back, and there seemed to be no time that passed, because then she'd start talking and I'd be like, oh yes, I'm here talking to my friend, and disappear. Like, so these things still happen, but the end of suffering is the end of seeking, is the end of caring how it is, not craving these experiences. And that's all I'm talking about. Afterwards, experiences and different things can be seen. But here, what is talked about is the end of suffering, and that is the end of seeking. And it's irrelevant here what life shows me. I have no motive to find out why or who's watching or what's happening anymore. There's never the answer to the questions. It's just the end of the one that wants to question. The end of that momentum. I need to find this out and work this out. This life is odd and bizarre. It makes me laugh a lot because none of it really makes sense. And so these experiences may carry on, but it's irrelevant if there's no seeking there. It's just the same really as going and having a chai. because you don't want anything grander. It doesn't make any difference if the I am's here or not. Jinking your tri is just as divine as being an infinite light.
It's difficult to peel away that instinctive urge to do something.
Yeah.
All the extra stuff that...
It is so strong, the doership. Do. Like your body's screaming at every moment. That contraction is happening in the body where it feels like this is the edge of your body, and it's maybe not so strong, like sometimes it gets less and more. It's all like the screaming pulses of doership, seeking. I have to get something. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Sometimes it's worse and there's loads of discomfort and the mind thinks, oh, it's because I haven't emotionally releasing. It's not because you haven't emotionally releasing. It's because there's a seeker there going, there's that seeking energy going, get, avoid. Every part of the body feels it. And when that falls away, the edge of your body disappears because there's not that constant reminder or that illusion of somebody there. But that sounds confusing. The mind can take that, the edge of my body disappears. Woohoo! And that could be like such a dramatic experience. It's very natural. When I'm talking to you, I'm as much you as I am this. I don't even see this. In fact, what's seen there is more me now at the moment, except I can see this a little bit. But if I go like this, this is just requires a thought. When there's no thought there, there's just looking at you because there's not the contraction into this.
It's hard to understand that. It's locked into objects.
Yeah. Actually, you know this. You do know this. It's actually happening in the experience of everybody a lot. It's just that the seeker's coming back and claiming, and the attention's on the seeking and the seeker, and it forgets this. Because the way that memory works, do you remember being a child? This is amazing. I don't know how Lisa knows all this. Like this isn't coming from Lisa. Anyway, here we go. So you know when you were a child, do you remember like being 4 or 5 years old, and if your mum said to you, remember going to Bournemouth or on holiday last year, you'd be like, whoa, that was such a long time ago, and it feels like infinity. You could vaguely remember going to Bournemouth, or maybe not even, but it seemed like eons ago. And then as you got older, time seemed to speed up, and you could remember things very vividly. It's not that the memory gets better, it's that the seeker's continuously repeating the stories in the head.
Yeah.
The seeker, and it gives the impression of closer time and an impression of someone. So seeking, the seeker remembers seeking. So it's constantly repeating the story of who you are, what you need to get, what you want, what you don't like, what someone's done to you. And the memories seem really vivid. It's not that the memories got better, it's that constant mental activity over time, as you get older, is getting heavier and heavier and heavier. And the repeating is getting more and more and more. And so it seems like you remember last year better. It's not you remember last year better, it's that the story's gone through your head a million times. When you're 4 years old, you do an experience and then it's forgotten because you're just on to the next experience and you're not repeating it again and again. I remember like here in this story, this has got nothing to do with happiness, but what happened here, I was severely dyslexic as a child. I don't know if you know dyslexia. And I was very slow, and I couldn't grasp language. I used to have to go to speech therapy because I couldn't grasp language. I mean, time was just like, I remember people trying to explain time, and I'd be like, it just made no sense time here. And I remember the feelings. And I remember being 8 years old and suddenly getting time. And like most of my friends had got it like years ago, they perceived time, but I suddenly remember having this recognition of time. But I clearly remember living timelessly, like living without any sense of time. It just was what it was. And then I remember sitting there and going, oh, it was 1998. It was like February, I can't remember the date. And she'd written the time and the date on the board, and I was like, oh, that's a year. And I remember like dun 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 working before. I had no concept or perception of time. I still hadn't learned to write then. Time came before writing. It took going to private school for me to begin to learn to write. It was very, very difficult. But you must, maybe you guys remember this or remember suddenly perceiving time.